Ms. Knight, Dr. McLeod.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Powell. Thank you, Aaron. So today we're going to have a little bit of fun while we learn about a very important concept in instructional design, and this is called course mapping. And so in this section, we're going to learn how to map your course. And Lisa and I both think this is going to be a very valuable exercise that you can utilize with your own courses when you're designing them. So my name is Dr. Jamie McLeod, and I've been in the community college system of North Carolina for 15 years. I've been an instructor, I've been in technical support, I've been an instructional designer, and I'm currently an instructional designer and an instructor here at CCCC. And I teach computer classes, and this fall I'm beginning to teach communication classes. Lisa, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Knight, and I'm an instructional designer here as well as a physics instructor. I've been at the college for about 18 and a half years, and I started out as a full-time geology and physics instructor. I recently finished my master's in instructional technology, and I'm really excited to work with you guys. And as we get started here, if you guys would take the time in the chat box to think carefully about what your favorite jelly is. And if you would please post in the chat box the type of jelly that you like the most. We would really appreciate that. It's going to help out a lot. So, as you guys start the semester here and you start thinking about teaching your classes, if you've got teaching experience, you've been through this before, but if you haven't, it's pretty new to you. And I imagine you're probably going to tackle it the way most of us have. You're going to sit down, you're going, okay, I've got this book or these text references, and my students need to get through this material. So I'm going to do chapter 1 the first week and chapter 2 the second week, chapter 3 the third week, and hope I get through it all. What we would like you to do instead of thinking about trying to just get through the material is we'd really like you to start thinking about what you want your students to do at the end of the course. When they get done with your course, what is it that they should be able to demonstrate to you to show that they learned whatever it is they're supposed to learn in your curriculum? And we call that beginning with the end. So we use a strategy called backwards design when we work with instructors on designing their courses, whether it's a face-to-face course or an online course. And all we really want you to do is think about what the overall learning outcomes are for your students. And then we encourage you to then think about how you're going to chunk up that material into smaller units, and then for each of those units, what do students need to do in those units that will ultimately support the learning outcomes for the whole course? So to start with that, a really important skill to have is to be able to come up with these learning objectives or outcomes in such a way that students can actually demonstrate mastery. And that means that you need to be able to write a measurable learning outcome or objective. And a tool to use is called the Bloom's Taxonomy. I'm going to share that with you. And first of all, I'm going to, in the chat window, I am going to paste a link to this document, and then I'm going to share it with you here on the screen. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, so Bloom's Taxonomy, hopefully it'll share here in a minute. There it goes. Should be popping up. And it's kind of small here, and that's why I gave you a link to it in the shared drive. And you'll have it, we'll share it with Aaron's shared folder as well so that you can download it there. But Bloom's taxonomy is basically a list of different cognitive categories, from remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating, where remembering is the lowest of all of the cognitive skills that your students should be able to do. And so when we write an objective, what we want to do is we want to think about, well, what do we want our students to do? Do we want them to be able to remember certain things? If we want them to understand something, what do we mean by that? Do we want them to classify different concepts? Do we want them to compare and contrast different ideas? Do they need to explain something? Do they need to extend something? So what we have here is a tool that you guys can use to find words or verbs that students can actually demonstrate to you. And when we go back to our Bloom's taxonomy, there we go. Sorry, guys. Trying to go back to the presentation. Jamie, I don't know why it's not working on my end. Sorry. All right. Here are some examples of some learning objectives that are measurable. Students will describe the steps of photosynthesis. Students will demonstrate how to rotate and balance tires on a car. Students will identify safe welding practices and procedures conforming to the American Welding Society, AWSC 49 standards. What you notice about these outcomes is that they all have kind of a similar format. They use an action verb, and that students can actually demonstrate to you. And they also identify exactly what it is they're going to describe or what they're going to demonstrate. And they're very specific. So when we write objectives for our courses, when we start thinking about what we want our students to do at the, by the end of the course, we want to think in terms of what can students show us. We want to avoid thinking about, students understanding and learning, because those are too vague. We need to be more specific. So for example, if you are teaching an English class, students, you may want students to be able to write a paragraph in a certain way that includes certain parts to it. So when you write your measurable objective for that, or your learning outcome for that course, you will have a learning outcome that will describe that specifically using an action verb. You guys are going to get a little practice doing this today, and we're going to kind of brainstorm and use an example. But before we do that, let Jamie explain to you how a course map is made using these objectives.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. So kind of the big picture of this, how you use the objectives. So you start with your course objectives, and we're going to take a look at a sample course here in a second, and we're going to make a course objective. That's the very first part you start at. When the students complete the course, what are they expected to be able to do? And this is really the main objectives of the course. And all of your resources, all of your modules, all your assessments, your module objectives, they're all going to tie back into these course objectives. So they're the most important part of the course map process. And so with the course map, you begin with the end in mind, like Lisa mentioned. And so you create your course objectives so that you know at the end of the course, where do I want students to be? What do you want them to be able to demonstrate? What facts do you want them to be able to recall? What things do you want them to be able to do? And it'll all depend on the course and the type of course it is. And so once you have these created, now you get a better idea of what learning looks like. So what is student learning? Well, these course objectives help you get there. And then the next step is then you create your modules. So you determine how many weeks or how many modules or units your course has. You create those units and modules, And then you begin to make module objectives inside these modules. And you use the course objectives to make the module objectives. So each module objective you make will tie back to one of the course objectives. And this is what we refer to as alignment. And so once you do that, once you create your module objectives, then you can take those objectives and then determine what kind of resources do I need in order to meet these objectives. So then you'll find the reading material, you'll make your lectures, you'll find the YouTube videos, you'll find all the resources, the chapter readings that the students will need to get them to those module objectives. And then finally, for each module, you'll actually create your assessments and your activities that will show that the student has met these objectives because they're demonstrating, they're recalling, and they're doing activities that you're grading to show that, yes, the student has met the module objectives. And so that's the overall process of a course map. And you actually can map this out in Excel or in Microsoft Word with text. And you'll end up creating this text of your whole course where you can clearly see how everything works together. And it'll help you see, do I have too much content? Do these objectives align with my course objectives? Does my YouTube video in Module 1 line up with my Module 1 objectives? Or have I just included it, but it doesn't really have anything to do with my objectives? And it'll help you see these things more clearly. And it'll also let you see the amount of time the students are spending in each module, because you may have put too much material in a module. And a course map will help you be able to see this more clearly. So let's just go ahead and take an example so you can actually do this, so you can see what it's like. So some of you might have been wondering, why did we ask you your favorite type of jelly? Well, I hope that jelly goes good with peanut butter because we are going to make a course that is going to teach students how to make the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay, so raspberry, I think that probably goes good with peanut butter. So that's our task. So we've been given a task, create a course, how to best peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So let's take a look at how this course mapping process works, given this task to create this course. Okay, so if you will remember, we're going to start with our course objectives. So it depends on your course how many objectives you're going to need, but we're just going to start out with 3 for now. So I've already created one course objective, and I'm going to ask the viewers here if they can help me out a little bit, maybe pick some verbs, some ideas, and maybe we can get these other 2 created, or at least have an idea of what we want. So the first one says, demonstrate an ability to cut a PB&J sandwich properly into triangles. Because if you're going to make the best peanut butter and jelly sandwich possible, it has to be cut in triangles. So we're going to teach students in this course, and we feel like if they're not cutting them in triangles, then the student does not know how to make a proper peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So that's a very important course objective. So let's think about what could we use as a next course objective? What would be another important thing that a student needs to know about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? Do I have any ideas? Sure. Tiffany?
Demonstrate the ability to utilize tools in a safe manner without
the tool, like knives and things like that. Yes, that would be important, not to hurt yourself. Yeah, so you probably want to use a more duller knife. But yeah, that's a good example. So that's a good course objective. Who else? I know we got a lot of good ideas in here.
What you got? I'm
consistently use the right ratio of peanut butter to jelly.
So what we would want to do with that?
To consistently use the right ratio of peanut butter to jelly.
So since we've used demonstrate twice, we might want to look at another one of the verbs. So with that one, we could pull up something like define,
Okay.
Recall the proper way, something like that, or describe. And that would be another good course objective. So it's good to vary the verbs so that you get a good distinction between the course objectives. So you cover a lot more items. Okay, so I thought those were all really good ideas, and I hope that helped you see kind of the starting process. Yes, so describe the ratio of peanut butter to jelly, demonstrate tools in a safe manner. So those are some good course objectives. So we have the beginning of our course map. So we're going to take these 3 course objectives. And now what we're going to do is we're going to break out into groups. And in these groups, you're going to create one module. And inside that module, you're going to create 3 module objectives. So the first thing you want to do is you want to create the module name. So I don't want to say too much because I don't want you to replicate what I say. But think about what would be a good module unit that would help teach students to meet these course objectives. And remember, when you're making your objectives, make sure to tie them back to the course objectives. So when you're making objectives, how does it demonstrate safe tools? Lisa, I think that's echoing through the microphone.
Yeah. Oops, sorry about that.
Yep. So think about how your module could demonstrate the safe use of tools, properly cutting a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and describing the ratios of peanut butter and jelly. So think about how the modules you create can then have objectives that will tie back to these course objectives. Okay, does that sound like something you guys can tackle?
And I'll just add the module unit name. It doesn't have to meet all 3 objectives. It could just be a module that meets one of those objectives.
Correct. Yes. Okay, so Lisa's going to put each of you into groups, and we're going to break out into a group. And then we'll give you some time to work on these objectives.
I'm starting groups right now, and we'll kind of mingle in with you as you work. And how much time are we going to give them?
So I think 10 or 15 minutes is good.
Okay, sounds great. Here we go. Mm-hmm. Mm. I am going in the groups. I'm going right now. I'm going to group 3.
objectives, then that would be an indication you want to add another course objective. Does that make sense? So even your course objectives are set in stone. That's just the starting point. And then as you fill out your modules, you might have to add some more.
Ready to disband these?
I think we're back.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, is everybody back? Looks like it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now what we want to do as another group activity is we want one person from each group to share the objectives they came up with and the name of the unit. So who would like to go first from what group?
Do you want us to paste it in the chat or just read it or just say it?
Either one, either way.
Oh, I don't know. Can you hear me? This is our group. We said these are our 3 units: PB&J presentation, tool safety, and PB&J ratio determination. So the objective for course objective 1 was selection of the best bread and use of proper tool to achieve triangle presentation. And we did debate about 2 versus 4 perfect triangles. So I guess we could do both, either or both. Tool safety, objective, compare and contrast utilization of safe tools. So we're going to compare a spoon versus a butter knife. And ratio determination, experiment with peanut butter, that's supposed to be PB, peanut butter and jelly volumes to achieve the best ratio.
Okay. Oh, that's great.
All right. Okay, we'll let the next group go ahead. Who wants to go next? And then we might have some time to talk about some of these.
I can go. This is Shelley.
Okay.
Demonstrate how to construct the best PBJ, and then we said identify the best tool for making the PBJ, identify the most nutritional bread, identify the best peanut butter, and estimate the required amount of peanut butter and jelly.
Okay. All right. That sounded like all measurable verbs to me. Sounded like good ones. And what was the name of your unit?
I don't even know.
Okay.
Demonstrate how to construct the PBJ.
So the name of the unit would probably be something like the components of the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, maybe, or something like that. Introduction to the components of a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds better.
Okay. And the final group.
I can share. And so our unit we had is titled as planning. So before you can really make a sandwich, you need to know exactly what to do. And then our objective we had, let's see, identify being able to identify locations that are best suited for sandwich making. So knowing that you want to take it to a clean countertop or kitchen, not a bathroom or garage typically. Then we have summarize all the needed materials and tools used in creating a PB&J. And then lastly, more so maybe for a later unit, but test several ingredients that best complement your taste buds.
Awesome.
All right.
Those were very measurable. Mhm.
I have a question.
Sure.
I don't know if our group did not understand what we were supposed to do, or if just sort of let me make sure I understood. Were we supposed to go back and line the modules up with the course objectives we had done just before the breakout group?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Lisa.
Well, yeah, well, yes, that actually is what you end up doing when you make a course map. So yeah, so we had asked you to come up with one module, and that would correlate to one or more of the course objectives. And so, and in that module, then for that unit of material, come up with 3 separate objectives. You guys came up with
Okay.
an objective for 3 different modules, which is fine because you did a great job. You came up with basically, it looks like 3 modules that related to those course objectives, and for each module you gave an example of the objective. The whole point of
Okay.
this was for you to practice making those objectives and
Okay.
making sure that they were measurable. And your compare and contrast objective, I'm sorry, I can't read it all. I have to pull it out. Compare and contrast utilization of safe tools. That's a nice measurable objective. So I think you guys did a good job. I mean, you know, whether you did 3 objectives for one module or 1 objective for 3 modules, it doesn't really matter. The point of it was to practice writing these objectives. Do you want me to do this one, Jamie?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So once you come up with your course objectives, and then you chunk your course up into units, and then for each unit you come up with objectives, then the task is to figure out what kinds of activities, what kind of content you're going to give your students that help them meet all those module objectives and ultimately the course objectives. So I have, I'm going to put in the text box a link to uh, the document that I'm going to show here. And this document is an example course map that Jamie and I created. And so what we did is we hadn't gone through this activity with anybody at the time, and we came up with our own course objectives. And of course, the first one was demonstrate an ability to cut PB&J sandwiches properly into triangles, use a butter knife to evenly spreading the correct amount of jelly and peanut butter on 2 slices of bread, and evaluate the different types of bread, jelly, and peanut butter available. Choose the most healthy options to use on the sandwich. So those were the objectives that we came up with, and you know, for sure you guys came up with very similar ones as well. And then you notice how we numbered these: CO1, CO2, and CO3. We decided that we would concentrate on our first module, which was selecting the peanut butter, the jelly, and the bread. And we then came up with, in our example, 2 module objectives. First, the students would identify the calories per serving, the carb amount, and the protein amount on nutrition labels for jelly, peanut butter, and bread. Because in order for them to figure out whether something was healthy, and to meet course objective 3, they need to be able to read a nutrition label. So that's one of our objectives for that module. And the second objective would be that students would then choose a bread, a peanut butter, and a jelly so that the sandwich had only 250 calories or less, no more than 8 grams of carbs, and 2 or more grams of protein. So that they were now, you know, actually practicing what we, you know, and accomplishing what we wanted them to do in course objective 3. Then when we thought about the activities, we said, okay, well, you'd have to have some way to teach them how to read a nutrition label. So maybe we'll find a video on that, and that'll meet module objective 1. And then we'll want them to practice it, and it could be a graded assignment or it could just be a self-assessment, but they're going to have a practice quiz where they practice reading the nutrition label and get feedback to see whether they're doing it correctly. And then we want them to do some kind of active activity where they're actually interacting and doing it in real life. So we're going to maybe do a discussion board or some kind of group activity where they share an experience going to the grocery store. Maybe they took some pictures of the nutrition labels and they talked about what they were going to do, or how they were going to select their materials for their sandwich. And that grocery store activity would satisfy both of the module objectives, because they would be looking at nutrition labels and reading them, and they would be making selections according to the second module. And then, of course, we would assess them. The final thing that they would do would be a discussion forum assignment where they actually explain, how they met the criteria for module 2 or module objective 2, and then the participation and all that. But that would be the actual grade that they would get on that module. And they might get a participation or a small grade for doing the other activities, under instructional materials and activities, but the main assessment would be in the discussion forum. But you notice that what we're doing is we're really thinking about, okay, well, I want them to make a healthy sandwich. And in order to do that, what do they need to do? So I'm chunking up the skills that they need to do into little bite-sized pieces. And then I'm making sure that I have a way for them to learn how to do that skill, a way for them to practice doing that skill, and then some kind of activity where either they're interacting with with the instructor, or they're interacting together, or they're going out and physically doing it. And then I have one or more assessments where they're actually demonstrating these module objectives. And by ensuring that these module objectives support a course objective, if they can demonstrate M1 and M2, then they have successfully demonstrated in the course the third course objective. So what it does for me as an instructor is, instead of me just saying, hey, read chapter 1 and learn everything in it, it makes me sit down and think, okay, what is really important in chapter 1? What are the little skills that they need to have to support the ultimate goals of this class? And then I can pick and choose content and practice activities and develop assessments that allow them to show and demonstrate their mastery of those objectives in a variety of ways. Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, and while we're waiting for questions, I just wanted to say, think about your own course, maybe module 1 and some of the courses that you're getting ready to teach, and think about how you could fill this out for them. What are your course objectives? What are your module objectives? What are the activities? What are the assessments? And just kind of visualize how you might use this in your own course.
I will say that when you first start taking this, or thinking about it seems a little overwhelming, but once you start using the course mapping process, you're going to see that you get really good at it. And it really is a great way to take a lot of material and just narrow it down to what you know your students need to know.
I have a
Keisha.
quick question.
Mhm.
So I was looking at the course objectives 1, 2, and 3, and I guess I'm thinking if I was setting it up, I don't know if I would make 3, 3. I'd probably make objective 3, 1, just based on my thought. The breadth.
And that'd be fine.
Yeah. So I guess would it matter how you align your course objectives. Not it just depends on how, you know.
Yeah. It doesn't, so technically, probably course 3, objective 3 should have been the first objective, but it doesn't really matter in the scheme of things, as long as the modules and the module objectives are aligning with those course objectives. And this was a simple activity, but in our courses we have bigger objectives, like our students need to be able to demonstrate that they can write a paragraph in the correct way. They need to be able to solve mathematic problems, a whole range of problems. So our course objectives in our real courses are usually broader than these. And so because they're broader, they're usually not linear. They're not like, sequential. Yeah, it's usually the module objectives that tend to be more sequential. Because what you're doing is you're taking one chunk of the material that they need for that course, and you're basically scaffolding it for them. You're breaking it up into little chunks, one at a time, so that they can meet the ultimate goals.
Yeah, I guess, Lisa, wouldn't a good answer be that, like, that's really where the instructor comes in and puts their
Mm-hmm.
twist on the course, right? I mean, because two different instructors might choose to sequence things in a different way
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to do different activities that would allow you to scaffold the skills differently to get
Mm-hmm.
to that objective, right? That's really where the skill in teaching, particularly online, comes in play, is that you have to understand and think through. And what this forces you to do is think through, what little things do I need to teach them early on so that they can build on that and get to this overall goal. And so, yeah, you might go into a course or you might think, well, I need to teach this first or that first, and different people teach it different ways. And so that's really where
Mm-hmm.
you make the course your own, and you make it, you know, fit your personality in the way you think it needs to be taught, because you're the expert in the subject, right? So
If I could make one comment related to that, what Rodney was just saying. I think my camera's off, but anyway, here I am. Sometimes that's where tweaking comes in, because the first time you teach a course, you may have it in a certain order, but then you might realize, you know what, it would have been better if I would have done that first and then that, and then went into this. And so you kind of tweak it, and the next time you teach it, you might put it in a different order, and you might, get better results, or maybe it flows better.
That's a great point. I have to teach a course this semester that I hadn't taught in a long time, so I didn't have a course map for it. So I decided, well, I'm gonna map this course. And so I went through the existing course and I started mapping it, and I realized that as I was, looking at the structure of the course, that I wanted to rearrange it and tweak it exactly like you described, because I realized that it didn't make sense to me. Like, why am I doing this here? And that's what's nice about a course map, is that it really gets you to kind of think about the big picture before you're already in the course in the middle of the big picture and kind of like floundering around. And so even though you guys are just getting started, and some of you guys are brand new and some of you guys have taught for a long time, this is a great skill. Even me, I have 25 years of experience teaching. When I do a course map, I feel like it's always giving me a way to continuously improve what I'm doing. So I strongly urge you guys to think about approaching your course design this way, with the end in the beginning.
you guys have any other questions for Jamie and Lisa? And they'll be around. You'll see them again at some other sessions during the next few days. And so feel free to ask them at any time. And their office is right next to mine in Marchant Hall in Sanford. So feel free. Their door's always open. There's always at least one of them there. Come by and ask questions at any time, or email them, or hit them up on Google Chat or something. They're always willing to work with people for different things. So you guys want to take a little bit of a break before we come back and talk about building a syllabus? Raise your hand if you want to take a break. How's that?